welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And we are here on this special edition, 9 a.m., following the news here on a Wednesday, to wrap up. That's right, folks. We're going to wrap up our conversation with Lumari of Lumari.com on the Akashic Records. And before we give out the specifics of our conversation, Lumari, it's good to have you back here on this Wednesday, and it's also the final Wednesday, as those who are listening to the program on that Wednesday, it's the last one of August. So we're heading into what we all hope are cooler temperatures across the board. I suppose there is that possibility of getting that polar vortex coming down. And what's interesting, folks, is we're going to be talking about vortices here on the program. Lumari, great to have you with us.
Oh, Richard, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Now, we're going to dive into this last chapter that we're going to be talking about regarding the Akashic Records, and we're going to be talking about the gateways. We're looking forward to finding out how to discover these gateways, portals, and vortices of energy that are specific points of access to the Akashic Records. And these gateways can be planetary, interdimensional, or multi-universal. Now, that one I want to talk about as well. And they hold information and frequencies for evolution. And this particular chapter highlights that accessing these gateways can accelerate healing and personal growth. And we've been talking, of course, about this, throughout these entire series from January to the present, and I'm sure beyond. That's really what we've been focusing on, is that whole aspect of personal growth, isn't it?
Yes. And access to the things that are, I'll just use the word for now, greater. So there's tons of conversations all over the place about personal growth, and it seems to be more like emotional compatibility, understanding, and things like that. And when you and I are talking about that kind of personal growth, it's really connecting with your higher purpose, connecting with your soul being, looking and experiencing the world from a place that's bigger than two eyes and a body. And that's what's really exciting about our conversations, and also what's really exciting about the Akashic Records, because their wisdom is infinite.
Indeed,
and even our brains can't conceive of infinite. We can imagine infinite, what it might be, but technically we can't. Our brain can't think about infinite, because a thought isn't infinite. It's finite. Did I just go too big?
No, I actually think that this concept, that when we talk about it, I remember in, I think it was math, where they first introduced this concept of infinite and finite. And certainly finite, that's easy to grasp, because finite is basically there's a limited amount of whatever it is you're talking about. And when you're talking about, for example, the universe in a material sense, they say that it is infinite. And obviously that one still, that aspect, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, how can it be infinite? How do you know that it's infinite? Maybe it's finite. Maybe there's a wall out there somewhere, Maybe we're in a big ball that looks like the universe. There was even a program, a movie, where there, and I think it was Men in Black, where this cat had this thing around its collar, and when you looked at it, you could see like what looked like the universe. And it was another one of the, what was referred to earlier, multi-universal, where there's more than one universe. And so this particular universe was inside this, what looked like a clear ball. Well, how do we know that our universe isn't like that? Which would make it finite. But nobody knows.
Well, and so the way that we look at things like that, it's like, or at least how my perception is the universe technically is all of it. That's the infinite part, because it keeps on getting created. Then there is what we might consider the universe in more scientific terms, and those have boundaries to them. So they might, like, thinking of it more like a galaxy, right? Okay, if they think about the universe like a galaxy, then after a certain point, there's something else beyond that. So there's many different finite things that are all connected.
Exactly. And I think that when we start to ponder the aspect, as I mentioned just a moment ago, about these different aspects, the gateways, pardon me, planetary, there are speculations that because there are so many galaxies, there are trillions of planets. Now, how many of them are inhabited? Nobody knows. Then there's interdimensional, which we've talked about before. And the thing that I find interesting, and my wife has actually experienced this concept of portals. Now, I've been to Sedona, and they refer to that. It has a vortices.
Right.
A singular is a vortex. We hear that term every winter when the quote-unquote polar vortex comes down from the north across Canada and brings freezing weather. But we're talking about a more esoteric concept of a vortex or portal. I think that the television series Stargate sort of brought that home first, more so than maybe some of the other science fiction programs of years gone by, where they actually would activate the Stargate or portal, and depending upon what they dialed up, determined where they were going to go. Although most of the time they had no clue. Here we're talking about wanting to go to the Akashic records to find out more about who we are as individuals. Are there, and we'll start from, I suppose you might say, the more material perspective. Are there places on planet Earth that are more, shall we say, more conducive to accessing a portal or activating a portal that we could conceivably walk through? And again, I don't know if Sedona is one of them, that we could find somewhere on the planet and say, hey, I need to go to this location to activate this portal, and then you have to know how to activate it in order for me to be able to access the information that I'm looking for, to get the answers to the questions that I'm asking. Can you elucidate on that?
Sure can. So my first answer is no, meaning that there aren't specific areas on our planet that are more conducive to connecting with and traveling within the Akashic Records. So that's just something, it's like it's not Akashic Records City in Arizona, right? Or, or in France or wherever, right? So there's not something like that. So that's like the relief, right? Because then it would be like everybody would have to go there and it would be weird. Meaning you would have tons of people going to a city just to access the Akashic Records, and it would start to be very confusing, and then it would start to be very controlled.
Yeah.
It's like now you got like travel guides and, school buses going there and stuff like that. You can just see on the side of the school bus, Akashic Records tours. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't. I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't already out there, regardless.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, vibrationally, when we talk about vibrational portals and gateways, that's a whole other thing, because then there's a vibrational aspect that you tune into, and that resonates with, I'll call it, the destination. And so it opens some place where you can connect, you can vibrationally travel there in a way that is still related to your own vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going into, some sort of spaceship that everybody, as long as you pay your fare, you go and you get there. It's not how it works with the Akashic Records. So when you're talking about it, and you're talking about a gateway and a portal, it's like when you resonate in a compatible vibration with that gateway, then you can enter. You're allowed to enter. You can enter. You can resonate with that. And then you can travel to or connect with vibrationally with that aspect that also is in harmony with you.
That is an
Does that make
important
sense?
factor, isn't it? That you find those vibrations that are compatible to you. You don't get odd vibrations.
No, it's very important. And the thing that it's brilliant and important. The brilliant part is actually the Akasha know this, right? So you are recognized, you are understood, and the vibrations that are in alignment with you are present if you're deciding to go and connect with that wisdom.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really important about it is that you're receiving guidance, wisdom, understanding, et cetera, that's in alignment with you. Which means that it might be bigger. It's not something that is already what you understand. It's going to be bigger than you understand. It's going to be more inspiring, more depth, more expansive. All of that's going to be there. But it's not going to be in disharmony, in chaos with your being, with your mind, and with your spirit. So you're not going to receive, arbitrarily saying this, you're not going to receive the wisdom of all the wars in the planet Earth
Mm-hmm.
and how they all happened and how many people died.
Yeah.
Because you're not going there for that. No, they will have that wisdom. They have, because they've collected the wisdom of everything. They've collected the history of everything, the occurrences, the wisdom behind it, the intentions, the people's lives. All of that is in there. But you're not going to the Akasha to get that. Now, if you were a historian, maybe you would be, but then it wouldn't be emotionally attached. But if we were going in and tuning in and we got that, yeah, okay. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I would totally be in psychic spiritual shock. It would be detrimental for me to know that, to experience that.
So the process is not, as the phrase goes, it's not going to rock your world in that respect. It's a...
Well, it will rock your world, but it won't blow you apart.
Won't blow you apart. It's along
it won't hurt you.
Right. Well, it would be along the same lines in the material world of a boy transitioning into a man or a woman into a girl into a woman. And that we go through these different phases from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. And even though it's divided into those three basic ones, the adulthood is then divided into a bunch of other segments too. But there are these rites of passage, so to speak. That's sort of what these gateways are all about. And I don't think that we're really trained, especially going from childhood to adolescence, we're not really trained on how to go through those gateways or those handle those passages. It's almost like you're kind of on your own, and you're going to figure it out as you go. And there is some truth to that. But at the same time, we all go through it. And you would think, and I know there are books on this too, but in terms of formal, informal training, shall we say, from the family or the school or the church, there really isn't anything that helps us. Sometimes we do actually go it alone. But we learn, and this is part of what you're talking about in terms of being exposed to or touching base with, connecting with these different vibrational patterns, is that it's going to, again, it'll, as you've said, it'll rock your world, but it won't blow you apart. It'll be what you can. I guess there's that one phrase that you're never given more than you can handle, right?
Well, in some respect, we would say that. So let me clarify some things so that people actually know why we're excited to connect with the Akashic Records. So we want to, as humans, as beings, as souls, we want to learn more. We want to sometimes learn more about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes learn more about the things we're interested in. Sometimes learn more about what our soul purpose and our calling is. So all of those things are aligned with us. If you're looking at learning more about yourself, you might find out in 15 different lifetimes that you had the same challenge, or that you had challenged the same challenge, but you were on all these different opposing sides. So you were the peacemaker,
Mm-hmm.
you were the warmonger, you were the intermediary, you were all of these other things, but it was in the context of that one ideology, one experience, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so you would be able to see yourself in all of those different lifetimes and gain the wisdom that some of it you may even know, even though you don't know where it came from, because a lot of times we have wisdom that we know, we just know we know,
Right.
but we don't know where it came from. And now all of a sudden you go, oh, I was in ancient Rome. I remember all the goddesses. Why don't people love women like that anymore? No wonder I'm XYZ, blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you get to follow that. Or if you look at it and you realize, oh, I'm a musician. Oh, I had 15 different lifetimes where I was in music somewhere, whether I was leading a band or I was creating symphonies or I was making instruments or whatever. No wonder music is such a passion beyond what I can play on the guitar. And you start to understand those things about yourself that is much bigger than how you know yourself. And so it would, think about being a musician and realizing, okay, guess what? Mozart was your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
You used to hang out with him all the time. Oh, by the way, you did, create trumpets in one lifetime. And, oh, you did actually own a recording industry. And, oh, my gosh, you played in this rock band, right? And you're like, whoa. I like listening to music, and this is the genre I like. And,
Mm-hmm.
I play every once in a while in the club. I didn't know I did that. That shows you a whole other world of your own soul and being.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it can blow your mind, but it's not going to blow you apart.
Right.
And that's one aspect of understanding, connecting with the Akashic Records, because there's other places where you may want to learn about things that aren't necessarily in the flow of what you're already doing. It may be bigger than that.
Yeah.
So just saying it, because we all want world peace.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at it and going, okay, I want to explore how vibrationally we really can resolve conflict without anger and judgment and pointing fingers. I want to look at history and see how that came about. Now, that is something that you want to focus on, but you're going to see a lot of different things that come together like that. That's a whole new way of thinking of that you might want to be able to integrate, so it's not actually integrated in you yet, but it's still part of who you are. It still resonates with your being.
Let's talk a little bit. Now we've discussed, of course, the information and so forth. Let's talk about these gateways, as this chapter is titled. Mm-hmm. And let's start with the and I'm not sure the difference here, and I'll have you explain it. Not just the difference between the planetary and interplanetary, but the planetary / interplanetary portals or vortices. They came about a long time ago. They weren't necessarily created let's say in the 20th or 18th or 6th or in the BC 6000, they actually could go back what hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, in terms of their creation, in terms of their being placed so that when we arrive some millions of years later, they're there for us. We just have to kind of open up. But talk to us about the difference between them, but also the creation of these vortices or portals.
Well, the wonderful thing about a vortex or a portal is that we can call it a perspective, or we can call it a travel point. So when you're connecting with it vibrationally, again, we're not physically going through it. So you're not beaming up, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Again, using an old TV phrase, right?
Yes, indeed.
But like when you're looking at, I can't remember where it's from, but I
think
remember
it's Star
beaming
Trek.
up God. Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when we're looking at that, it's like vibrationally, thought-wise, consciously, we are having access, we're traveling through. Now, and so there's an opening and a portal for you a vortex for you to travel through. And it is a construction so that you can connect from point A to point B, wherever those are, and then gain access so that you can connect with, understand, receive guidance and information, explore different areas and different ways of thinking and being through those places. Obviously, you have to, be in alignment to get access to them, and also to get access to the kind of the other side where the info is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they were created ahead of time because the divine ones knew that there were multi-dimensions, and they wanted the opportunity for each and all of us to be able to expand, grow, evolve, transform into higher levels of our own awareness. And so they created these so that we would have an easier access, other than, like, if we looked at it, okay, if you really want to evolve and grow, from being just mildly aware of rocks and sticks to aware of the entire cosmos, it would probably take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can connect with, resonate with, and then access a portal or a vortex, you can travel through that with an open mind and being, and start to understand and have access to more. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
So with the planetary/interplanetary vortices or portals, gateways, I think I'll stick with one word here, the gateways.
Okay.
We also have these multi-dimensional gateways as well. How do they differ from the planetary?
Well, let's just say planetary has a more cohesive framework. So we are talking from, our planet to another, or our planet from beyond, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we look at a gateway, it's more open. So you can connect with other sources. The planetary, you connect with power sources and energy sources within the planetary body. And beyond that, you're connecting with things that are beyond a planet, that are more galactically aligned, more spiritually aligned, more aligned beyond what we look at.
Mm-hmm.
So that it may, planetary, which we're happy to be here, they relate to humans, animals, plants, land, rocks, etc., etc. And then beyond that, well, we know that there are other things that are interdimensional, that are beyond a planet alone. There's a whole other level of different consciousnesses that are there. And it's beyond the physical responses. And me saying that, I am not diminishing or exalting spirit or physical.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of conversations do that. Like the physical is the low end and the spirit is the high end. And my feeling is if it was created, it's all the high end.
Yeah, I get that. So we've got these, these two elements thus far that we've talked about, the planetary and the multidimensional, or we'll just say dimensional portals or gateways. Hard to break a habit, isn't it? And then we have universal gateways,
Right.
multi-universal or multiverse, if you will. And it seems to me, okay, we're talking about just three aspects or potential gateway paths, but I would venture that just as there are many, I'm gonna use the term finite at the moment, finite planets, finite dimensions, and finite universes, there are also finite gateway possibilities, not amongst those three specifically, but those are only three of the finite categories that we've defined.
Well, and one more thing I did want to say about the planetary gateways and the interplanetary gateways is that when you were talking earlier about the different sacred spaces on our planet, whether it was Sedona or Machu Picchu or the pyramids, or any of those, there are portals there. We all know there are. That we connect with, and I'm not saying they're specifically related to the Akashic records.
Right.
They are very spiritual portals. We all know when we go there. We can tell. And the ancient ones on our planet have always known that, those are just a couple I'm mentioning, that there are sacred places on our planet that are vortexes. They have that energy. And people go there all the time because they do.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up while we were talking about, the planetary things as well.
That's a good point. That's a good point to make. So what about this whole aspect of multiverses and the gateways therein?
Well, isn't that fun to think about, right? That we're in a place where we can have multidimensional, multi-universal experiences that are beyond what we all of these experiences technically are beyond what we think. Because when you experience something, it's no longer philosophical. So we can all look and know that the divine is bigger than we can ever imagine. But then if you start to connect, or when you start to connect to these things and you see how big it is, then you go, whoa, it's bigger than I thought it was, and I thought it was pretty big. It like opens it and opens it and opens it. And so the universal and the multi-universal things are all of these amazing experiences coming together, playing together, and then bringing it into, there is a oneness there, and there's an appreciation of each expression in that multiverse, in that different dimensional aspect.
There is an aspect, speaking of aspects, that I find fascinating. Now, we've been talking about this whole aspect of personal growth, learning about self through the Akashic records. And in saying that, there is another element that sort of overlays that. And so we also are talking about evolution, not only our personal evolution, but our species evolution, our planetary evolution, our universal evolution, right?
Yeah.
That's all part of it.
And isn't that exciting? Because guess what, everybody? we're all part of it.
Mm.
We are, right now, this moment, everybody who's listening is in the process of a universal, galactic, global, planetary, human species evolution. We are accessing higher vibrations of being. We are able to understand and conceive of things that we couldn't conceive of before. We're actually able to create things that we wouldn't have imagined before.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also able to vibrate at higher levels of being so that we can move into different dimensions of awareness, still being totally ourselves, but not necessarily limited to, I'll say, old-time triggers. Because we're moving into a different place, vibrationally. So if we look at things, let's just say from 2,000 years ago, not that I remember it in the moment. But
right.
2,000 years ago, there were only so many choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were a man, you had this amount of choices. And 2,000 years ago, most men really couldn't run their own households because they were still indentured to whoever was ruling wherever they were living. You weren't that independent as a man.
Yeah, I got you.
You were more independent than a woman, but you weren't that independent as a man because there was a guy who was running the show in your neighborhood or in your land or in your country or your continent, etc. And that's very different than now. Because you actually can have your own money. It doesn't really belong to someone else, technically. You know, on a higher level, yes, it belongs to the country who gave you the money, but it doesn't actually because you get to spend it however you want.
Yeah.
Right? And a woman's life is very different now than it was then. And that's an evolution of consciousness. And now here, back then, we could never have imagined this.
Yeah.
And yet here, imagine where we can play. Most people in our world right now, actually, when they think about peace, when they think about harmony, when they think about loving different aspects and different types of people and different places and different things and different plants, they don't think about only one can live and the rest must be destroyed. They go, wow, that would be the best salad I ever ate. Red lettuce, green lettuce, arugula, whatever.
Exactly.
You know, it's like we can seriously not only picture it, but we can feel like we could live in that. Like there wasn't the trauma there anymore. We can actually resonate to that. That is moving into a higher vibration and a higher consciousness than we had before.
And I'm not sure whether I want to say unfortunately, there are those who would actually like to take us back to those days 2,000 or 200 years ago. There are even books and television series, and I've watched one of them called The Handmaid's Tale, that basically that's what they want to do specifically, because you brought up the subject of women. They want to take us back to those days where the men have the control over the reproduction or the continuation of the species, and so on and so forth. But I have a feeling that is a minority, and that when people write these books about this, like The Handmaid's Tale in particular, it's not so much trying to focus on what, hey, we may go back to this. No, it seems to me like sometimes they're writing this, and maybe it's on a universal level, that they're being written and they're being released to say to people, giving them that choice. Do you want to go back here? Is this really where you want to go? Or remember, that's the way it used to be. You don't have to go back there. You can continue to move forward and evolve away from this particular Because to go the other direction, I think wouldn't the term devolve be an appropriate
I think
term?
so.
Yeah.
I think so.
But
I think so.
but I would venture that you see our society as actually we're going forward. We're not going back. I know
No, we
that's a
are
phrase
going
that's being
forward,
used. You know, that's a phrase that's being
and
used in some circles, isn't it? We're not going back.
exactly, exactly. Well, and the other thing about this is that if I ask myself the question, why would you want to go there? Why would you want to go back? Then there's only so many. We're not going to get into the politics of it, but
No.
there's only so many answers that can be there, and one of it is fear, because they're afraid of what's coming. And the other is, obviously, we've talked about this before, which is control, because if you put it back there, you understand where you were or your group was in control back then. But what you're not noticing is what is possible.
Yeah.
What is being created, because we're and the evolution on our planet, a lot of people don't realize how far back it actually does go and how conscious it was. And some people say that originally most of the countries were led by women.
Yes.
And it was rewritten afterwards to be mostly male-dominated. But we're in a position and a place where it's both. And
Yeah.
isn't it amazing to be able to have that many perspectives, that many ways of creating, that many ways of looking at things? And I love to look at it like it's music and art, of course cuisine too, but it's like I don't listen to just one kind of music. I don't. I listen to all kinds of music, and if there's new music that I haven't heard, I'm going to really listen to it. Whether I like it or not will be a conversation later. But if it's something that I've never heard, I'm going to listen to it. I want to know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I may not be, an ancient folk music kind of person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I might not. I might not want to listen to it like way back in the day when they sang this song. But I would listen to it to see what it was.
Yeah.
And I could listen to it to see how it created the flow of music we have now. So, ancient folk music created something else that created something else that ended up being symphonies and jazz and hip-hop at the same time. Okay, I'm in. I want to know all of it. I want to see all the different contributions, not only pointing to one thing and that's how it is, because the universe is not like that. Otherwise, we just look in the sky, there'd be all these stars that looked exactly the same, with all these planets that looked exactly the same, with all these countries that looked exactly the same, and you'd only have like 4 plants in your garden, case closed, the end. That's not what we have.
Mm.
And that's not what we're here to play in.
I find this conversation regarding evolution interesting because it is not something, and again, this is just my perspective, it's not something that can be debated. There is no argument, there is no pros and cons. It is a reality. It is happening as we speak. And I will give, those who would say otherwise, a scientific lesson. It has been stated time and time again, and I learned this I think it was in biology, that the body that you came into this world with is not the same one that you had at the age of 7, 14, 21, 28, and keep going, multiples of 7. It is said that every single cell in your physical body changes over the course of a 7-year period to where, again, the body you had at 0 ain't the body you had at 7, and so forth. That's evolution. Now that's a short-term process because we're here for, I always use the phrase, we're here for less than a puff of smoke. But maybe 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, maybe 110, who knows? But you're only here for a short time, but you are evolving. And I then go to the next level of education. Why do you send, if you have children, why do you send them to school?
Well, and the thing is, when we're in this conversation, because we know there are people and families out there who do not want their children educated. There are actually people out there, my dear friends, who do not want their children to learn to read or do math. They don't want them to do that. They are barring them from that experience. That's actually happening. Now, the world is still evolving.
Right.
And the math that they use for physics now is completely different than all the other things that are going on. Our consciousness is evolving. And there are people who may want to stop that from happening, but you can't. That's just how it is. You may be able to stop some people from learning a particular way based on schooling and language, et cetera, but you're not going to stop them from learning. You're not going to stop their body from evolving. You're not going to stop the vibrations in their consciousness from changing. And you're not going to stop them from knowing and experiencing. How they translate that might be something that people have control over, but not for long.
Now, you said something very important, a specific word, knowing. We start out believing based upon whatever it is we base it on. And it's 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, a belief is not based upon any facts. It's based upon opinion. It's based upon speculation. It's based upon theory. And it's not bad. It's nothing wrong with that. But I go back to, and I've shared this many times, Greg Braden on this program. When we were interviewing, I was talking with him about his book, The Healing Power of Belief. And he stated that one day we will no longer believe, we will know. And
that's
what
a whole other thing.
And what you're saying is that we know, but we don't necessarily choose to trust it. We're not taught to trust our inner knowing.
Well, that is really, really a powerful point. And it actually resonates with the Akashic and with us, right? If we look at the Akasha, it is a body of knowingness. All the information, all the different things, I can't even describe what's there. It's impossible for me to. But it's wisdom, it's knowledge, it's patterns, it's math, it's all sorts of stuff that my mind doesn't necessarily think in those categories, but I know they exist.
Yes.
It's a whole body of knowing. And we are born with knowing, and then it grows. Now, are we trained in this? Hardly. People will tell you that, if all of a sudden you get a chill down your spine and you feel creepy, trust it. That's a knowing. You know something's wrong. But going beyond those things, we have to explore, we have to trust, we have to go beyond what we think, beyond what is taught us. Because a lot of the things that are taught us, and we're not even talking about philosophies, a lot of the things that are taught us are no longer valid.
Right.
You don't have to have a paper copy of a book to read a book. They're online. It's not a copy. It doesn't have to be shipped to you. You just click it and open it. Now,
right.
50 years ago, no, they weren't online. right? I mean, and that's just like I'm making like a simple and silly description of what the knowing is and what the wisdom is. We have a whole other thing that we're really excited to be able to participate in. The Akashic Records gives us access to things that we may have a sense about, and then when you connect with the Akasha, you have a deeper knowing. You might want to follow, and I totally suggest everybody follows their knowing. Knowing is not opinion. Knowing is not belief. Knowing is a resonance with an aspect of life and being. And so it's a greater understanding of things. And we're all here for that. We're all here to experience our personal life and to uplift our world and our community and humanity in a really responsible, loving, caring, advanced, knowing way. That's what I think, anyway.
Well, and I think that what you're talking about is absolutely absolutely appropriate in that respect, because, again, we're just trying to do the best we can here, and trying to figure this out for ourselves as well as those around us, so, don't, it's not a question of, taking it, shall we say, taking it as gospel, as it were. It's more, you've got to do the work to figure out what works for you, what resonates with you. It goes back to what you've said many times throughout this series, that the vibration, you've got to connect with the accompanying or coordinated or what have you vibration to get where you need to be, and that's very important to think about, in our day and age when we're dealing with so many things. I got into actually I was kind of disappointed in this conversation that started, because the issue had to do with, started out dealing with freedom of speech, and how does that all work in terms of, for example, the internet and whatnot. And then it went to perception. And the person I was talking with made the comment that, well, you're denigrating my perspective by saying that I have a right to my perspective. And how am I denigrating your perspective by saying you have a right to it? I'm saying that you have a right to it. And we all do. And it's like, well, wait, now I can't even now converse about someone's perspective without them getting all, as my father would say, bent out of shape, over, just that, the perspective.
Well, and the thing is, when talking about perspective and understanding, what we want is something that there is a possibility in what you're looking at, in what you're exploring, that there's an openness.
Mm-hmm.
Because many people, and they may be coming from a place that's trained, or they may be coming from a place that's really defensive, and they're afraid to not know something, that they're holding so strong to what they believe and what they are told is true, that there isn't a place to explore and listen.
Yeah.
The universe doesn't do that.
Yeah.
See, the wind from Atlanta, Georgia, if it's blowing east, it's going to go into France. Now, are the French people going to speak with a southern accent? No. But they're going to be influenced by that whether they know it or not. And then it's going to keep on going. So all of a sudden, the air that was in Georgia now has gone from France, it's in Egypt.
Yeah.
It went all the way through there. Whatever was vibrating in that air is now there. And then if it keeps on going, it's going to go to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, then it's going to go to California, it's going to go back to Georgia. And when it goes back to Georgia, it's not going to be the same air.
Right. Right.
And that influence is there, and the newness and the curiosity, and whether it picked up scents or it picked up pollen or it picked up dust or higher frequencies from something that we wouldn't recognize because we can't perceive that yet. And that is how the universe works.
Exactly.
It works like that. That's why plants keep on evolving. That's why humans don't look the same as they did 4,000 years ago if we were on the planet that long. I'm not a historian. But you know what I mean.
I do.
Some people say we've been here 100,000 years. I don't know. Not my gig. Don't study that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But this is where we can play, and that's why with your curiosity and your wisdom and your understanding and wanting to know more, connecting with the Akashic records, and in the last part of my book, there's meditations that help you connect, and of course I do readings from my clients on the Akashic records, so we do that too. But you can tune into that and start to explore. And this time in our lives and in our world, we're here for, like you said, evolution, growth, change. And evolution is being greater.
Mm-hmm.
More possibilities.
Absolutely.
More openness.
Absolutely.
And, and if I look at it in the highest space that my head is in at this moment, I would love it if everybody on this planet got to share with each other insights and wisdom and let go of the detrimental stuff. I'm not going to name it all, right? Just detrimental stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to wrap
things. And be playing there.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to wrap things up, but I want to share with you folks that, and this is, and I love this because this is the Akashic Records speaking here. We hold the blessings of your life in readiment for you. We hold the expressions of the universe in readiment for you. As in every turn of life, you must first approach. Then you must ask for entrance. Then your gateway will open. Then the records will be revealed. Each approach and entrance will find you at your level of expression and grant you the blessings of the greater awakening. And it will come at your time and for your blessing. We are at your service in this. We await your petition with great anticipation. We welcome you into your own lives and into the experiences you design. Evolution is but a breath away. Breathe in joy. Lumari, it's wonderful to have had the opportunity to chat with you about the Akashic Records over these previous these 6 weeks, and we're going to start on a new tack next week in our next series. And thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings to you, Richard, and blessings to everyone. Thank you.
And I thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love Talal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.